All right. It looks like most of the people who registered have hopped on. Probably have some new people roll through here. Feel free also to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll get notifications about these events upcoming as well. And we're going to start building out our YouTube channel a good deal more. It's something that over time I've wanted to do, not necessarily had the time for, but we've been putting together some good stuff here lately. So excited to put it out to you guys. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh Zello. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Tennessee. I'm also a mental health service provider, board approved supervisor, so I can provide supervision hours for counselors that are up and coming and wanting to get their licenses. I'm also a certified mindfulness professional as well. So if you ever have any questions for me, you can feel free to email me at jzello@chatcc.com, or you can drop some questions in the chat today. If we have some time at the end, I'd love to answer any questions that you want to throw into the chat. Feel free. You do have to have a YouTube subscription or a login in order to leave comments in the chat. So just an FYI on that. But yeah, so today I'm super pumped to talk to you about something that's really a passion of mine in my practice. I work with a lot of folks who have adult ADHD, and realizing there is a lot of material out there for kids with ADHD and a lot of resources for parents in those situations. There's a whole group of folks walking around, though, as adults with ADHD, and they might not know the best way to manage that. And so I wanted to just provide some modern resources that from a starting point, it's really important that we're all on the same page here. These are ways of managing ADHD. They're not ways of curing ADHD. And we'll start with that from the gate. So these are tools that have impact on the areas of life that commonly increase the symptom severity of ADHD. And so that's the framework for this whole entire presentation, is managing areas of life that can significantly impact ADHD symptoms, either in a positive or a negative direction. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump in. Also, I have some people out there making sure that making sure that my audio and video are coming in. So I'm going to be jumping between screens here. But we'll go ahead and get this underway. Again, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and pop those in the chat as well. Hopefully I can get to those. So yeah. So before we start, like I said, these are not treatments to get rid of ADHD. I mentioned that. Also, throughout the presentation, I'll offer some suggestions on certain products, certain websites, certain things that I've seen in the practice that tend to work for my folks. I'm not paid by anyone to be on here right now. None of these companies have given me any sort of money. They're just things that I've encountered throughout the years that I feel like have been helpful to my clients. So I wanted to include some practical examples of those. Obviously, this live stream's not meant to serve as counseling. If you or a loved one are in any condition where you need immediate mental health assistance, please contact a professional in your state or your state's crisis line. And then lastly, I do briefly talk about medication, but I do talk about supplementation, using supplements. And please don't take what I'm throwing out here at face value and just go out and start taking these supplements. Please do your own homework, your own research. Make sure that these things don't interact with medications that you're taking or health conditions that you have. And always, my recommendation is to talk to a doctor if you have any questions about those supplements. Yeah, so just some disclosures before we start. And this our first the first thing that we'll tackle here is sleep. So it's probably one of the more well-researched areas of ADHD, both for kids and adults. Is sleep can be very choppy, difficult. Oftentimes this comes with insomnia. And there's also a tendency to overcommit and feel very spread thin, and as a consequence, not get good enough rest, maybe over reliance on caffeine or other type of stimulants that would keep you awake during the day to try and help you focus and get everything done, jam packing a day and not actually finding rest for your body and brain. So this is an area that we can speak directly to that is going to have some direct impact on ADHD symptoms as an adult. Well, we could talk about sleep from a psychological perspective, but there are some really important biological perspectives that we need to take on here. One, there's a very strong correlation between ADHD and magnesium deficiency. And so one of the things that we can do to help with sleep, because magnesium is a necessary component, it's natural, obviously, it's a salt. It's necessary for our autonomic nervous systems to regulate and deal with anxiety, deal with things like cortisol in the bloodstream. These Magnesium is a powerful supplement for focus. And when it comes into sleep, there's different types of magnesium. There's citrate, there's threonate, there's bicarbonate. The one that is most researched to be helpful with sleep, and particularly staying to sleep, is magnesium L-threonate. And you can see right there in the slide, you want to take this 60 minutes before bed, anywhere between 200 and 400 milligrams, and kind of tapering up there. Don't take 400 milligrams in one night. Obviously, this is what you feel like is best for your body, but it can upset the stomach a little bit. So you want to give your body some time to get used to any sort of higher dosages. But this is a really easy starting space, because magnesium is a relatively inexpensive supplement with big benefits, because so much of ADHD management as an adult is actually anxiety management. And if we're magnesium deficient, it puts our baseline already higher. So this is a really easy thing we can address. It's one of the reasons that I put it right at the beginning. Another supplement that's helpful, particularly for falling asleep, is L-theanine. And L-theanine is soft classified as a nootropic, but this can be taken at the same time as magnesium L-threonate, one to help you fall asleep, and then the magnesium typically is going to help you have a deeper sleep state throughout. So these two, great combination, great 1-2 hitters for sleep. Magnesium is something that can be taken daily for forever. There's studies out even recently that most Americans in general are magnesium deficient due to our diets. L-theanine is something you should rotate. It's not something you want to take for a full year. Rotate 2 weeks on, take a break, and then maybe if you need it again, go back. But sleep cycle is exactly that. If our sleep cycle is off, these things are meant to help our sleep cycle get back on. And once our sleep cycle's back on, once we feel ourselves back in that cycle, a regular rhythm and routine with sleep, then we don't need things like L-theanine in our, we don't need to supplement things like L-theanine. There's some obvious ones here, but often ignored and not paid attention to. No caffeine 6 to 8 hours before bed. This is also really well researched, something I would really encourage everyone to stay away from. If you're really liking coffee, go for that decaf, but 6 to 8 hours, no caffeine or stimulants before bed. If you're a smoker, if you are taking in lots of nicotine, we try and limit that, like a 2-hour window before bed with no nicotine, because nicotine has a stimulating effect too. There's really cool research actually around different types of noises too. And the ones that are soft researched for ADHD, pink, white, and green noise. Now, you might have only heard of white noise machines, but they've created a spectrum of different frequencies of what was effectively white noise, and have labeled them different colors. There's cool apps online. There's cool apps that you can download right to your phone, and you can have that sound machine in your room coming from your phone. Or what I recommend, so we don't keep the phone by the bedside, is picking up one of the machines on Amazon that has the different color spectrums of noise. I've experimented with this actually, and the green noise, my goodness, it just knocks me right out. There's something behind it. It's not an exact science right now, but I think each little bit that we can do, if you can afford to do, or if you have access to, each little bit that you can do actually winds up adding up. Um, Including a really heavy hitter is eliminating light, um, and your phone. And I encourage all my clients to pick up a secondary alarm. And there's some obvious benefits to this. Blue light has been shown to actually to keep your awake circuits on. That's the simplest way I could say it. But blue light keeps your awake uh, circuits on, and your phone is full of blue light. So a lot of people stay up scrolling or reading on their phones before bed. Even if you put that on night mode, um, it's still it's still going to have blue light in your eyes. I really encourage people to switch to things like Kindles if you want to read, like Paperwhites, things like that. But ideally, just maybe turn the lights off and try not to engage anything. And you might deal with some boredom, you might deal with some restlessness, but eventually the body starts to come around to that. Also, I would encourage no night lights in the bedroom. If you have TVs in your bedroom, put black tape over the little indicator lights. All of this stuff has been really researched to show that even the smallest bit of light in the room can disrupt sleep, including your sleep state. So, not just falling asleep, but the sleep state itself. And if you can swing it, we get the secondary alarm so that we don't have the phone just sitting on our nightstand, right? Easily accessible. We can pick it up and look at it. We actually want to move away from that altogether. What I try to do, and I'm generally okay at it, is when I get home, I try to put my phone in a place that I'm not going to access it at all until the next morning. And generally during the work week, this is something I try and do. And if you can get a secondary alarm clock that actually has a light, like a light source wake up on it, it's actually really cool that your room just will fill with imitated sunlight and wake you up. But if you're a really heavy sleeper, pick up a secondary alarm clock and use an alarm clock instead of using your phone. That way you're not tempted to have that light right in front of your face. And then there's also some really cool research around weighted blankets. Um, these used to be very, very expensive when I first started in the field, like very expensive. Now you can pick them up at Walmart for relatively inexpensive. And there's a chart on each one. The chart shows you your size and your weight and how the corresponding blanket weight that you should get, because they come in different weights. If you sleep hot, most of them actually have like a surface on them that's kind of cooling, because they know that if you sleep hot, putting a weighted blanket on can be tough. But there's something about that compression that regulates the nervous system and really helps ADHD folks with sleep. Again, hot sleepers sometimes struggle with this. Lastly, I will also say that the ideal sleep temperatures are between 60 and 67 degrees. I know not everybody's in a position to cool their house to that degree, and that's totally fine. But somewhere in that range is actually going to help you fall asleep a little quicker. So yeah, there's sleep, an essential part of the body resetting. The brain, the simplest way I can put it without going into minute details, is your brain does its cleanup then. It kind of puts memories to rest, it puts ideas to rest, and it does a lot of routine maintenance while you're sleeping. And you can imagine, for the ADHD mind is very, very active, full of ideas, full of directions that it wants to go in, full of memories. And that ADHD mind really does need good sleep. So I put it at the top because I feel like it's one of the more important, if not tied for most important. And then I actually put the one I think is most important very last. So um, keep everybody going with it. Now, the next one that I want to talk about, this one's a little controversial in the ADHD community because it can get quite annoying. So I've tried to come up with different ways with my clients to address it, and that's the use of timers. Timers can be uh, timers can be an absolute game changer for someone with ADHD. And sometimes it's just, it lasts for about 2 weeks and it fades and we start ignoring timers on the phone. Or the hard thing about timers is they'll often, the harder thing about timers is you wind up looking at your phone because all the timers are on your phone. So I have some suggestions when it comes to this. And what I encourage folks to do is to try to pick up an inexpensive Bluetooth watch. Entry level Garmin, or even on Amazon, you can just get timer watches. That way, you're not getting notifications from your phone. It's not distracting, but you can set these timers and for the important parts of the day. And I encourage people to either go in two different directions, either gamify timers or life flow timers. Gamify timers, how I describe it for anybody who's a gamer, played games, when you when you beat a level and go to the next level, right? We don't play in the old level while we're playing in the new level. So the timer is actually set at a certain part, either in the workday or in the day itself, that allows you to say, you know what, I'm done with this portion of my day and I can revisit it at a different time. But now it's time for me to level up. I'm going to level up to the next level of work or whatever it is that I have in front of me. And we can kind of create a game system throughout the day. You can include rewards in that too, which is super helpful for the ADHD mind. But gamify the day, gamify your timers. That way it's not a timer just going off to brush my teeth. You know, we could set a timer for, we could set a timer that says something like level colon morning routine, right? And then a timer that goes off when we get to work. It's like level, own work, something engaging to the mind where we're not necessarily going to ignore it. And it going off on the wrist makes a big difference because you're not going to be distracted by the phone as much. Or if the gamify thing doesn't really register for you, if kind of creating a game out of your day with timers, I encourage life flow timers. And life flow are simply that way you're not flooding your day with timers and individual tiny little tasks. These are just kind of like the gamifying, but transition points in the day. So we have our wake up timer, we have our supplement timer, or you can call that supplement breakfast, leave house, start work. Lunch is really important. ADHD minds get really locked in their workday and workflow and oftentimes forget about lunch, but our brain needs calories and that's the first place those calories go. So if we're not eating, we're going to start to get lethargic and even more scattered. The autonomic nervous system reacts with anxiety and it's no bueno. So the lunch timer is actually one of the most important. The leave work timer, this is one that I like personally. It's like, okay, I have to put everything down and I have to call this quits. I'm going to go ahead and roll out of here. The other one, we'll talk more about this, but relax. The relax timer, a time in your day where you actually sit and don't engage anything. We'll talk about that in a little bit when it comes to boredom, but there's that. And then, of course, our bedtime routine. So it's a life flow kind of move through. And again, outsourcing it to the wrist instead of the phone so you don't get distracted is a really, really good idea. I also encourage people to put in important tasks in the day. And I encourage folks to actually consider that those tasks should be social tasks. Because when you get really locked in, oftentimes you might forget to text a spouse, or you might forget to text a kid, or you might forget to text a boss or send an email to someone that you actually really need to check in with. And this is one of the common complaints I hear from spouses that have partners that are that have adult ADHD is they get very locked into the day. They're not sending the hey, thinking about you text, or hey, what are you up to, like just the simple social check-in stuff. And so it can feel inorganic to set a timer for that, but we have to accept that the ADHD brain really moves very quick and is very locked in and is actually really productive when it's locked in. It feels good. And so setting that social timer, though, is a really, really important part of maintaining relationships with ADHD. So I would encourage you, consider timers, and consider timers on the wrist. Try and get away from your phone with this. And most Bluetooth range, you can put your phone anywhere in your house and it's going to go off. That timer is going to go off on your wrist regardless. And you can also set it for notifications for your phone. If you're a habitual phone grabber and have like a lot of pickups, you can set that phone somewhere where you're not going to pick it up, like in a closet under a towel or something, and you're going to get notifications to your phone. If anything important comes up, then you can go get it and respond accordingly. But that's a great way to decrease cell phone use in general. So the use of timers, again, a little bit of a contentious spot in the ADHD community, but I think the gamifying, the life flow, and then also considering that those timers are helping you engage socially, it adds a different kind of touch to it. So yeah, and so this next one is it has a funny name. It's the Pomodoro technique, and I won't spend a ton of time on this. So make sure that we have everything, cover everything. But this is actually a workflow that has been well researched that can be very helpful with ADHD, to the point that an online company created a whole community that you or anybody can engage in order to use the Pomodoro work method. So we'll go ahead and go over that now. The thing that I consider for this, because it's about breaking up your workday into pieces and taking actual physical breaks between with body movement, which is really, really important for folks with ADHD, is to get up and move. We'll also talk about micro movements that are really, really helpful as well. The ADHD mind will lock in on a task and will look up and it's 2 hours later, and the body is restless, the body's hungry, we have to take care of the body. So there are these small timers on Amazon. They're about this big, or at Walmart or anywhere. It looks like a hockey puck and it turns on the outside. You can turn the top of that. You can turn the sides of that puck timer to set to different times. And we are, hey, thanks for that recommendation, by the way, in the chat. You can turn that puck timer to different times and it will automatically set to 25 or 50 minutes. This is really clutch because you can keep it on your desk. It's aesthetically pleasing, and oftentimes it turns into a fun fidget. But we want to either set our work timer to 25-minute or 50-minute increments and then take 5-minute breaks in between. Get up, move around, go to the water cooler, say hi to somebody. If you work alone at home, get up, walk outside or walk downstairs or walk somewhere. Get some movement in the day. In those 5-minute breaks, we come back to the work cycle. We come back to a new work cycle, re-engage the work. So that can be in 25-minute or it can be in 50-minute increments. And every 4 cycles, we take a longer break. I would say if you do 2 50-minute cycles, take your longer break after 2 50-minute or after 4 25-minute cycles, and that's a 15-minute break. Get up, move around, or even if you have to move your desk from standing, if you have to stay engaged, your work requires you to stay engaged, then move your desk up if you can. Or just try and break out of something. Like if you have a restroom break, go use your restroom break for that 15 minutes, try and take a little bit longer and then come back. The product that I really want you guys to know about is called FocusMate. It's a very, very low cost entry point. It's a really, really wonderful program where they've taken the Pomodoro method and made it accessible on a community scale for anybody who wants to be a part of it. So let's say you work from home alone, or you don't work in a open floor plan work environment. This is really cool. You can actually get basically an online buddy that does it with you. You start your work cycles together. They're in a little video screen up in the top corner of your computer. They're working, you're working, and then you're both kind of accountable to each other for stopping, taking the break, and then starting another work cycle. Very low cost entry point as well. I think it's free for 3 sessions a day or something like that. I can't quite remember, but really awesome program that can help you with the Pomodoro technique. And if you're in an environment where other people would benefit from this, get a buddy at work or get a buddy from the office and say, hey, like, let's do this thing together. We'll both keep timers. We'll try and stay on the same work cycles and just hold each other accountable to it. It really increases productivity. But what most people with ADHD find is by the end of the day, they're not utterly exhausted. They still have some good vital energy in there instead of anxious energy. So just just a cool little plug there. This next one is really, really simple. Actually, the next two are very simple, not a lot of explanation around them. These are things that I practice or try to practice most of the time. And I've seen from my ADHD folks, like if you can engage just these two rules, um, they will make a magnificent difference in your life and stress level. One of the things with our minds in general, they're very efficient, but they're prone to, what's a good way of saying it? They're prone to error. And so they're prone to error in perception. So the more the stress goes up, error of perception goes up with it. And when we have three tasks that we have to get done, if we're holding all of those in our mind to remember, it's it's almost like our body reacts and says there's six tasks. It's responding with the energy of it being six tasks, but there's only three. And we've all had this sensation where we feel like we have so much to do. So we sit down and we do some of it and we're like, oh man, that wasn't as much as I thought it was. It's because our brains have sort of spun up those activities. They really just need one thing to focus on. So these two rules really help with that. And then we'll talk about writing as well. So this rule, which we can call the 10-second rule, I encourage people to keep a running wait list of ideas and important thoughts, because those spin through the mind really quick. And you can get a small moleskin. It can go in a purse. It can go in a clutch. It can go in the back pocket. And if something hits you, and if you do have ADHD, you know exactly what I'm talking about. An idea hits you, something that you forgot to do hits you, these things hit you, you pull out your little notebook and you just simply write it down. Why that's important is because the brain associates computers and phones with storage, and it associates writing, physical writing on something with action. It's a really important thing to know about ADHD management is there's all these online systems that help you store things, and that's great. No problem with that. Digital planners, there's a place for it all. But for ADHD folks, there is a ton of benefit in writing everything into planners or writing into these little wait list journals is what I call them. And we take 10-second, the 10-second rule is to take a 10-second pulse before implementing or purchasing. So a lot of those things on those in those little journals, we could say, are the things that stay in your pocket. A lot of those things include purchases or implementing something new or creating a task within a task. And what I say is 10-second rule where you ask yourself the question, is this necessary for the task I'm currently responsible for, the thing that's currently in front of me? Here's a great example that I use all the time. Is let's say I want to go clean my garage, right? And I walk out into the garage and I think to myself, oh, the garage needs shelves in order for me. The garage needs shelves in order for me to clean the garage. So I sit down, I create a whole list of all the things that I need to build shelves, and I go to Home Depot and I buy all the stuff, and I come back, I load it in the garage, and now I haven't cleaned the garage, and I've lost my window of opportunity to clean the garage. And now that project is turned from cleaning the garage to also building shelves, right? And this is that's creating a task within a task, and it's something that really, really is prevalent for the ADHD mind. So if you just take 10 seconds, just 10 seconds and ask yourself, is this necessary for the task I'm responsible for? I will walk out in the garage and be, oh, we need shelves. It's like, wait a minute. That's a purchase and that's an implementation of something. 10 seconds. Is that necessary for me to clean the garage? No, it's actually not. I can clean out the garage in the state that it's in, and I'd love to have shelves at some point. That's something that's staying in my book. For me, I'm going to bounce it off my wife, honestly. I'm going to bounce it off somebody and get a second opinion, right? So the 10-second rule is a really, really helpful question before implementing or purchasing. The 2-minute rule, this is super simple. And this is something I've tried to practice and continue to try and practice over the years. If the task takes less than 2 minutes, do the task immediately. I try to do this with emails. I'm terrible at it with text messages for some reason, but I try and do this with emails, and it's very helpful. Phone calls, or like if I need to pick up in the room, and I encourage folks, my adult clients, is like, it could be something as simple as folding clothes. It could be something as picking stuff off the floor. It could be organizing the stuff on your kitchen counter. It could be knocking out a little bit of the doom pile on the dining room table, right? Any of these things, or picking up the trash out of your car, just getting some of the clutter out of the car. If it takes under the 2 minutes, try to remember this. And there are folks on here that are helping other people too. It's There's something about getting that rule into the mind. It starts to play itself out without a ton of thought, and your brain starts gamifying it, which is something the ADHD mind is actually really, really good about. So I really like this rule. It's something I encourage anybody to do, but folks with ADHD really benefit from these two rules. So um, now, the next one, it requires a little bit of context. We're going to talk some about neurofeedback. Some of you have probably have heard some things about neurofeedback. Um, and the research on neurofeedback is generally positive, but we need more when it comes to ADHD. We need more research. However, anecdotally, my clients who have engaged in neurofeedback for ADHD have seen some pretty cool results in regards to regulating body energy and focus. So it's something that I encourage you to check out either for yourself or anybody that you're helping. Neurofeedback is, I'll go ahead and pull this up. So, neurofeedback is a type of therapy that involves brainwave regulation. Essentially, it targets 4 different types of brainwaves, and it's a little headset that goes on. And usually, there's a game or a screen that you're looking at, and that headset is communicating with that screen and changing various variables in regards to the light that you're seeing, the sound that you're hearing, and your perception. And it's basically retraining brain waves, the brain waves that are responsible for calm and relaxation. It's trying to allow them to uh, essentially return or come to a space that's like within a normal range. And the brain waves that are often regards in high the brain waves that are often involved in high energy and anxiety is trying to get those to lower, right? So neurofeedback, again, really, really cool form of technology. It's been around for a while. It was commonly used in smoking cessation early in its inception, but this can be done by a professional. It's gonna definitely cost some money though. That's the only downside, in my opinion, is you're committing to a package, and those packages can range between between $1,000 and $4,000, depending on who you see. However, and this is something I hope we can integrate in our practice as well, there are some at-home devices such as Mindy and Muse, and they use different types of neurofeedback technology. You can do this from the comfort of your own home in 15 to 30-minute segments daily. You put your little headset on. They range between, I think Mindy is a little cheaper than Muse. I think Mindy is in the 200 mark, and it comes with an app on the phone. It's pretty cool. And then Muse is just a little more expensive. It uses a more in-depth technology. I think it's in the 250 range, but this is something you can do at home. And again, the research, according to their websites, their research is solid, but in general, neurofeedback does need a little more support to be able to definitively say, hey, this is definitively a helpful technique. The research is promising though, both in children and adults. So I do want to throw that out there. It's an investment if you go with a professional. They usually have more powerful equipment, and you don't have to do that in your home, especially if there's a lot of moving pieces in your home and you're trying to figure out when you could actually get this done. So there's neurofeedback in a nutshell. Great modern resource for navigating adult ADHD. Really encourage you guys to take a look at those things. It could be for you or a loved one or anyone else. Yeah. Um, let's see. Our next, we're going to get into supplements a little bit here. What I'd like to say on the front end is there is if you Google ADHD supplements, because so many people want a more homeopathic or natural ways to address ADHD, you are going to find an endless amount of products. And a lot of them, I hate to say it this way, a lot of them are empty promises, or they take one shown supplement that's helpful and they add a lot of other stuff to it and give you a very small amount. These sort of ADHD all-in-one supplements. Um, a lot of times people get very frustrated with the results of that. So I want to put this out here. I'm not recommending one of those larger like supplement brands that says they have the ADHD cure, right? These are actually really researched supplements that anybody could get access to anywhere. And these help with either focus, or dopamine regulation. And what we understand about ADHD to this point, though we don't understand it perfectly, is there is relationship to the dopaminergic system. And so regulation of the dopaminergic system can be helpful. That's a neurotransmitter in the brain and body. So just FYI, if you weren't familiar with that. So we have acetylcarnitine and L-tyrosine. These two are very similar in nature. Anything with an L on it is kind of subclassified as a nootropic, and that's not a hard science word yet, but that's what a lot of people refer to those L's as. Now, both of them have, you know, both of them have dopamine regulating effects. Acetyl L-carnitine is particularly helpful with kids and agitation, but it's also been shown to be helpful with adults in agitation, because that's a sleeper symptom of ADHD, is this sort of easy irritation, especially if you're overstimulated. So these two can be helpful with that, but we have to be aware of side effects and experiment with the dosages that you're taking of any of those supplements. Same with phenethylamine. Sorry, this this one acts a lot like L-tyrosine, and the two. Just again, beware of side effects. It can be hard on the gut, but also there can be some, in some cases, um, like an increased frustration almost in certain scenarios. So we want to be aware of that kind of thing with those two, particularly 2 and 3. This is a really popular one, omega-3s. There's good research around this, particularly an omega-3 that is high in EPA, so 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram of EPA. So if you turn your omega-3 bottle around, you're going to see DHA and EPA. The high levels of EPA are the ones that you're wanting to go for there, and that would be once a day. So good research behind that. It's great for focus. It's generally good for the body overall. Of course, check with a doctor, particularly, if you have cholesterol issues, you're taking that in through fish oils. We don't want cholesterol indicators to go up. We have alpha GPC. This is increased focus, and then creatine, maintain focus. All of these are easy entry price points. I would say creatine and the omegas are the easiest entry and most accessible. And so those two together can have really potent effects. These can be taken in the morning. I actually take a few of these. I take them in the morning. But again, you can talk to your doctor about dosages of these things, and particularly the L's. That's something I would, I don't feel comfortable giving medical advice around any of this, but like I said, something to consult with a doctor on or do your own homework and research. But all of these are readily available. So yeah, that's the thing with supplements is people tend to think of them as a cure. And I really try and get my clients away from that, or anybody away from that view that this is some sort of cure for ADHD. We are addressing the symptoms of ADHD. And I just want you to know that these supplements are addressing the symptoms. of ADHD. Each category that we're talking in, whether it's biological, psychological, or cognitive, or however you want to categorize it, we're trying to get at not necessarily the root cause, though something like magnesium could be. We're not necessarily getting at the root cause because we don't know what that is, actually. We don't know the root cause, but these are really helpful in symptom management and managing it all in general. Really important to remember with supplements because I've seen a ton of people get their hopes way up over the claims of a supplement and be very, very disappointed at the result of it. And oftentimes it turns them off to things like medication that could eventually be helpful. So, anyway, just put that out there. This next, and yeah, we should be right on time here. That's great. I want to talk a little bit about rest and movement. This is really, really important. Okay, I can't tell you how important this is. The developing a relationship with boredom. This is very hard for the ADHD mind to do, to sit down and be bored for 3 minutes, no phone, no TV. Yeah, there might be stuff moving around you, but we're actually just sitting there and letting ourselves be bored because it's the precursor to rest. And this is where folks with ADHD often will go to substances like THC or even pornography or drinking to get the mind to calm down because that is the only way that the brain can think of to enter rest. But boredom is actually the portal to rest. So the more accustomed and anybody with ADHD can get to being bored, the higher the likelihood they can achieve a rest state without a substance, or without going to something that is maybe full of shame, or going to a behavior that's overall not so healthy in order to find rest, because that's actually not the type of rest that the ADHD mind needs either. So I can't go through each step to developing a relationship with boredom. I think the piece of information that's most relevant, that's going to hit the mind well, is that boredom is the portal to rest. And my goodness, in our culture, we can't stand to be bored. We can't stand it. So we'll do anything we can to not be bored. And you put that on top of the ADHD mind that's already kind of distracted and prone to distraction. We'll literally do anything to not be bored. So we want to try and develop a relationship with boredom and actually see that boredom is the path to rest. Now, movement is the other side of rest, which is also important. The micro movements particularly. So many kids with ADHD were corrected for leg bouncing, tapping, fidgeting. What we actually see is that these things are really, really helpful to ADHD folks. So if you're in management or you have ADHD, or if you're overseeing people that have ADHD or trying to help people that have ADHD, the micro movements are actually really helpful for regulation. So allow those to happen. And I encourage my folks, even in session, like, go crazy with it. There's you're allowed to do that here. There's no shame over that, which is the final slide we're going to get to, which is the internal critic that comes specifically for folks and adults with ADHD that have been overcorrected almost their entire lives. How could they not have an internal critic? So we'll get to that in a second. But we allow this type of stuff in therapy, especially fidgeting. If you're working and you want to, again, the small stuff adds up. Let your leg bounce while you're working. It's okay. Like, if you want to tap, as long as you're not driving everybody around you too crazy with the tapping, let yourself tap, let yourself micro move. And then there's some really cool research around strength training being really, really helpful for focus. Again, that's not bodybuilding, that's not necessarily yoga or Pilates or like these. It's pretty intentional focus on muscles and building strength in muscles. Slow eccentric movements. Like, you can do your own research on strength training. I could actually nerd out on strength training and take up the rest of this time, but we won't do that. So I encourage folks also to get into some flow state walking. That flow state in physical movement is something that ADHD folks don't have a lot of natural connection with. The the flow state is often some sort of intense focused task that they dig into and stay into. So setting aside some time in the evening to just hit a level 2 cardio flow state, which is quick enough that you could have a conversation, but your breathing patterns are heavy enough that you wouldn't want to have a conversation. So trying to hit that level 2 cardio, even if it's just 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes every other day is a great thing to shoot for, combined with strength training. Really overall helps with focus and the anxiety and depression that often come along with ADHD. So rest and movement both in their proper places, right? Um, and lastly, we're going to jump. Oh, hold on. Did I miss one in here? Oh, I did. Where is it at? I'm sorry. Somehow a slide jumped out of here. Okay, so I'll just talk about this. I have the slide in front of me. There's something called overstimulation, and a lot of folks are familiar with this in regards to autism, and don't know that ADHD adults are really prone to overstimulation. That is when there is too much sensory input and the body reacts with anxiety. And oftentimes it's described to me as like a sort of buzz in the brain. Like if you rolled a back window down while you're driving, just a crack, that like whoop, 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 that feeling that you get when that's happening in the car, that's actually overstimulation. And folks with ADHD, especially adults, don't always realize, hey, this is like this is a thing for me, and this is a thing for other people that deal with this as well. So in those situations where we're feeling overstimulated, we want to turn off overhead lights, especially fluorescent lights. If you can't escape them, that's okay. Maybe just take your eyes, cover for a second, or close your eyes if you need to. Just sometimes just taking one of the overstimulating pieces away can be enough. So overhead lights off, fluorescents off if we can. If we can't turn them off, just close your eyes, focus on breathing for that overstimulation. I also encourage people to consider noise canceling headphones when they go home, especially if they have kids or the house is loud. Modern noise canceling headphones, you can actually adjust how much noise they cancel out, or you can let some noise in. It basically just takes the edge off of loud noises. So if you're doing dishes or, making dinner, and like me, I got 3 kids, they're running all around doing all kinds of things, especially my boys are pretty loud. Sometimes I'll pop those things in, and it's amazing how much everything sort of calms down within me because I'm not taking in so much sensory information. So considering noise canceling headphones. Again, I mentioned the eyes close, and please, this brings us into our next slide, but it's okay to isolate and reset. The world won't be mad at you. And if you're currently managing or helping people that clearly have adult ADHD, it's one of the core fears of ADHD is that the world is actually going to be mad at them. I wish we had time to fully unpack that, but it's important for anybody with ADHD who's listening to this. Like, if you need to peel away and reset, that's okay. There might be people who are upset with you, and that's all right. That's on them. It's okay to peel off and reset. And generally, the world around you is going to be accommodating to that, whether that's 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, or an evening. If it's like, I need all the stimulation to stop. Pull that card, do what you need to do if you're overstimulated and you just need to reset. And this naturally brings us into our last slide, which is the inner critic. The inner critic, the quickest and best way I can describe it for ADHD is you can imagine having a disorder that causes you to perceive the world around you a little bit different than everyone else, for you to be a little more excited about things than the folks around you, and for you maybe not to pick up on certain social cues or cut people off in their sentences, or for kids especially, very a lot of use of the body to express themselves. So throwing themselves around, running into things, sometimes hitting or smacking. And this happens back to back to back to back to back for a lot of kids, and all the adults in their lives are hopefully gracefully and gently guiding them, but that's not been the case for most of my clients. And so when you're hit with a criticism or a critique every 10 to 30 minutes every day of your life, there is an internal critic that builds in the mind that is constantly going over actions. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of ADHD folks, it takes them offline. So they actually become less focused when that internal critic is kicked in. And what I've also seen for my ADHD folks is they use that critic as motivation to get things done. So they rely on that internal coach and that internal critic for the energy to accomplish a task. And after years of doing that, obviously that's going to catch up, right? And eventually that inner critic is going to become hurtful enough that you're going to have to find other ways to deal with it. Otherwise, you start coping with substances, which is something we see a ton. That it's also important to know that that internal critic doesn't always come from trauma. I think there's a misunderstanding about that right now. ADHD and childhood trauma are correlated, which means that they tend to follow each other in research patterns, but they don't have a causal relationship. So there's no data to say that ADHD causes trauma or that trauma causes ADHD. So, in any regard, a lot of my ADHD folks tend to be holding things as traumatic that they don't know are traumatic, particularly because they got categorized as just another critique, just another criticism that they need to do better with. And oftentimes, that internal critic is very concerned with cues, social cues, and the ability to communicate with a certain level of excitement, and not too much excitement, not too little excitement, or cutting in on people's current sentence. Well, the best way I can describe it is that internal critic provokes a sort of social anxiety, which really stinks because our ADHD folks are often the most fun to be around in social settings, and this is something that can oftentimes shut them down and turn them off. That internal critic also isn't helpful in establishing boundaries or overcommitting, which is something typical again for adults with ADHD. And sometimes they don't realize it too much later in life that that excitement, maybe the lack of focus, maybe the lack of planning, causes them to overcommit and not have great boundaries with the people around them, overextend themselves, find themselves tired a lot. So the inner critic is a wonderful thing to work on with friends. If you have good friends who give good feedback and you want to talk to them, great to talk to a therapist or a counselor about that too. I would encourage that. And yeah, so that's I'm trying to think. Perhaps and of course, if you're a particularly religious or spiritual person too, there are ways to work with that inner critic through those traditions as well, or combining all of them. So I think, again, that last bit, that managing ADHD, is learning to work with that internal critic, because oftentimes the internal critic doesn't want to actually be doing what it's doing. It's actually quite tired, and so we can alleviate it of the responsibility, but that usually happens in therapy. So recognizing we're coming up on the end of our time here, and a brief moment, you might be wondering about medication. And medication can be very helpful for adult ADHD as well as kids with ADHD. We want that to be properly diagnosed and worked on with a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner of psychiatry. That is who I recommend. Your GP, unless they're working with a psychiatrist, is not who I would recommend to start you on medication. There's actually a really awesome service online. It's available in most states and it works with insurance. It's called ADHDonline.com. ADHDonline.com. You can take an online assessment, get an online diagnosis, talk to a psychiatrist online in a fraction of the time of getting that assessment in your community, because that can take up to 3 to 4 months and can be very expensive. This service is really good. Again, I don't get paid by them. I've referred my clients to them though. They've had great experiences. And their assessment also rules out other potential disorders as well, like OCD, generalized anxiety disorder, or anything of the like. So, um, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Again, thanks for bearing with me. Obviously, my first time doing this live stream thing. Hopefully, it turned out well. Hopefully, you join us for the next one. I'm thinking of either doing something on grief, um, like, how to walk through or even conceptualize grief, ways to work with anxiety, ways to work with depression. I try to make this as practical as possible. And again, if you need anything, Chattanooga Counseling and Consulting.com. Feel free to check us out. Again, you can follow us on YouTube and all the channels and stuff like that. Definitely follow us on Instagram. I think it's Chattanooga Counseling. But anyway, I can put that back up at the end of the stream. Definitely follow us on the gram, though. We put a lot of good stuff out there. You can stay updated on stuff like this. And yeah, thanks again for your time. I'll check you guys later.